Howdy! Alright, my name's Bella. Welcome to my spiffy new channel. It's actually not that new, but this is the first video. So, welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about my Mermay illustration, along with just some general life stuff. Ignore that, I just bumped my desk. Anyway, I sometimes just laugh at nothing. It'll be fine. Anyway, so I'm just gonna basically talk about how my thought process while working on this. I know it's a bit late for a Mermay video, but the audio I recorded while actually working on it is kind of bad. So I kind of had to re-record all this, and you know, life kind of got in the way, so it took me a while to get around to it. But I'm here now, and so let's get into it, shall we? So I used a random fish generator to come up with a fish because I personally know nothing about fish. I know of no kind of fish except for like a clownfish or a koi fish. Goldfish? Just generally goldfish. So fish not my interest area. So I used a random fish generator and I got a telescope fish, which led to some confusion on my end, largely because I can't read, because two types of fish showed up when I googled telescope fish. One turned out to be a telescope fish. The other turned out to be a telescope-eyed goldfish, and I would have figured that out if I had actually bothered to like slow down for a second and read, but I didn't. So I basically had like a moment of like, what the heck is this fish? And also just being like, because the actual telescope fish was kind of freaky looking. I think it's actually dead, but I ended up thinking, well, I can do something with freaky looking, so I went with that reference photo. Although initially, and you'll see this as I kind of start sketching, I went with the telescope-eyed goldfish at first because I'm like, this is cuter, you know, it's nice, it's round, it's good colors. And as I was working on it, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna kind of use this whole confusion as to what the telescope fish is like as a concept for the thing, and so I decided to draw little mermaids based off of both fish. So one's kind of like freaky looking, the other one's, you know, a bit more round and cutesy. I ended up really actually liking that contrast, so I think it worked out, but that's how that happened. That was the inspiration for that idea. Yeah. So when I was designing the fish, designing the mermaid, I did not design the fish. Think evolution did that. As I was designing the mermaids, I should give them names to make this easier to discuss, but I'm not. For the one based off of the telescope-eyed goldfish, I wanted to really focus in on that shape of those bulbous eyes, because that's really the main identifying feature of that fish. Other than that, it's pretty streamlined. So I did initially try to make her eyes look a little bulbous, but that really wasn't enough, so I ended up giving her little space buns kind of roughly in the shape of her, of like the eyeballs, to kind of on the side of the heads, to kind of give off that same silhouette. But I still felt like, you know, that wasn't really enough, so I kind of tried to capture some of like the shapes in the fin and kind of put it down into her blouse, and that's why she has like that nice flowy blouse. I also kind of ran into the issue of just realizing that the sketch was kind of dull and boring, and that's why, you know, I gave her initially like braiding a little thing with seaweed, because I thought, you know, that's something to do with her hands. And it was at that point where I'm like, okay, this is a little dull, let's do like the sister concept. That was when I decided to do it. And so I then, you know, put her on a little rock and then drew in, you know, the other mermaid, and I think that actually made it look a lot more like a composition that was like actually planned out. It really wasn't. I kind of just went with it. Now, honestly, sketching out the telescope fish mermaid was a lot of fun because I really went out of my comfort zone with her face shape, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I love drawing like the big toothy grins with the fangs. You know, if you've seen my DeviantArt, you guys know I am big the creepy cute, and I really enjoy doing that stuff. So, you know, really doing that was fun. And also, you know, I've never drawn a cleft chin before, but I kind of wanted to do it to imitate the shape of the telescope fish's jaw, like the bottom, because it has that little bit of a curve. And it was definitely a challenge when I went to like clean up the sketch for the line art, but I think it was worth it because I think it gave her face a lot of character, and I do enjoy how it ended up turning out. Once I was done with the sketch, you probably noticed that like I went straight into doing the background. I like to do the background as soon as I finish like the sketch of the foreground, because one, I think there are a lot of things in this explanation. You'll find that there is the actual reason I do things, and then there's the justification for why it makes sense. The actual reason is because I actually have always struggled to motivate myself to do backgrounds, and so I like to do it very early on to actually force myself to like do a good job, because I kept running into the issue, you know, in my earlier art, that I would do the parts that I actually enjoy like right up front. Like I'd, you know, draw a cute girl, and then I would be kind of like tired and like ready to be done, but it wasn't finished because it didn't have a background. So I'd just slap something together, and it was very half-assed, and it just didn't look very good. So I've recently gotten into the habit, because I've been trying this year to like be a lot better about my backgrounds, doing the backgrounds before I even start the line art. So I basically do it when I have the most energy, and I have to force myself to like work on it and make it look good, because I don't even have, you know, like the foreground to kind of distract from it. My justification for why it makes sense, and something I honestly would recommend, is because I find it, one, kind of helps sometimes to figure out if the sketch really makes sense. You know, if it doesn't really fit in with the background that you drew, then, you know, you might want to make a couple tweaks. Also, it's really, because I also like to, and you'll see this later, plan out the colors in the sketch phase once I'm done with the background. I do this to, you know, make sure to get a good sense of where things in the sketch actually are, because sometimes it'll be a little messy. But also, you know, just kind of see, okay, do all of these colors look good? And the actual reason, as I said, you'll see that there's a lot of justification, and actual reasons is because I also tend to do that right before the line art, and coloring is my favorite part of drawing. I really don't enjoy line art, it's my least favorite part. So it's kind of like a motivation thing. Like, I do the part I don't really enjoy, and then I give myself a little break by planning out the colors, doing the thing that I really like, and then moving on to the line art. But it also kind of has the added benefit, because I already have the background done, of focusing on picking out colors that work well with the background and the atmosphere I've created. And I find that I've been having a lot more cohesive pieces since I've started doing this. So I mean, I really mostly just did it as a mental hack to force myself to actually put effort into my drawings. I know, I say I love art, and then I'm like, I hate this part, I hate this part. I have to actually force myself to, try. But I force myself to try because I enjoy it, parts of it. But I mean, it's doing something for me, so I guess maybe there is some value in that. If, you want to take my advice. I don't know why you would, but there it is. So, when I was picking out colors, I had a pretty easy time with the telescope-eyed fish, because there was a lot of, it's a pretty solid colored fish, but if you look at it, there's a lot of, gradation, there's, that deep kind of royally navy-ish blue, but there is also, flecks of, this lighter blue color that I kind of threw in as, her hair, on the shine, that I threw in as her hair color, and then there's also, the orange, but you, also look at the orange, and there's a bit of, a brownish tinge at certain points, and there's also, you kind of look, you see little, flecks of purpley, or, a magenta wine red-ish color, and so that kind of gave me a lot of room to work. So I did a gradient on her top of I messed around with the colors a bit because my initial combination I did not like very much. It was more going to my default usual colors and really capturing the colors of the fish, but kind of this purpley deep blue, kind of a magenta color, and then an orange to kind of tie a lot of the main colors I was seeing in. And then for her tail, I kind of just did the main color that I saw with the highlight colors that I saw. So that purple, that light blue, little flecks of orange, just to spice things up a little bit, because I love orange. Orange makes everything better. Both the fruit and the color. I mean, I guess there are some things that orange wouldn't work with, but what's the point if you can't throw in orange? What's the point? But yeah, I had a much harder time though with the mermaid based off of the telescope fish, because even though looking at it, there was a bit more of a stark contrast than with the other one. In terms of the actual colors there really wasn't that much. It was basically this yellowy, green, sickly white color, and this light brown. And I actually didn't end up doing much with the light brown, honestly, because you didn't really see much of it. It was mostly just at the top. So I kind of had the issue of trying to work out a way to keep that color scheme, but also have clear definition between the hair and the skin, because part of what I had done with the hair was kind of make it scraggly pigtails to emulate the tendrils that were coming off of the telescope fish on the sides of its head, because I see that, I really think pigtails need some shampoo. Okay. That wasn't even funny. I shouldn't be laughing. I'm sorry. I laugh. I'm easily amused by life, myself, air. But the skin would also kind of have to be similar color, because that was the main body of the fish. So I basically ended up just going with two slightly different shades of white and hoping that the shading would follow through. I think I did. At the very least, it looks monochrome in a cohesive way, more or less. I then kind of split up the colors a little bit by, one, that big old smile. That big old smile really helps break things up. And I also gave her a little seaweed top. One, because I was like, I can't actually think of an outfit for her, based off of like fins or whatever like I had done for the other one. And then I'm thinking, when in doubt with mermaid, seaweed works. And it also kind of like went with her whole like kind of scraggly, you know, little sister vibe to, you know, have the, because that was kind of what I was thinking. It's like the telescope-eyed goldfish mermaid. The blue one is like this very put together older sister looking character. And then you have her weird little sister like sitting off in the corner excited about whatever it is her big sister's making with the seaweed. That was like the general vibe I was trying to create there. And so it ended up working out, I think. And it kind of split up the colors so she wasn't just a big old block of white, which I was very concerned about her being. It probably also helps that like you really only see her torso, so there's not really much of her at all, other than like her face. And I tend to render the face a lot because faces are just my favorite thing to draw in general. My favorite thing to color, my favorite thing to sketch, the only thing I really enjoy lining. I actually did line art for this. This is another thing. You know, I was gonna, you know, do this as I watched the video, but I found that I couldn't really focus my thoughts. So this may not really line up with the visuals you're seeing. This is very flowy. I wouldn't be surprised if I got everything I had to say out before the video is over. But you know what? I have other stuff to talk about. So we're going forward. Yeah. Anyway, so I actually did line art on this one, which is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily rare for me. I've actually been doing line art a lot more recently, but that isn't what I tend to do, in large part because I don't enjoy line art. I tend to basically just take my sketch, duplicate. I can English. I can talk. I speak one language. I shouldn't mess it up this much. So I duplicate the layer and then I basically just clean it up. I usually even really only just like erase away the lines, and even here while I'm actually doing proper line art, you'll see that, especially with the telescope fish mermaid, the little sister, because for some reason when I was working on her line art, I just could not draw that day. And you'll even see like me frustrated writing out how did I forget my anatomy, and you kind of see me just, you know, rough sketching out lines and fixing things and just erasing, because I care enough about my drawing to force myself to draw through a bad art day, but not enough to actually care enough about it like looking good and being neat to then afterwards go back and fix it. Because why would I go back to fix the line art? I don't even like doing it. I want to get to the colors. So then I get to the colors, which was the part that I enjoyed the most. First I had to look, because I realized I hadn't actually at all done anything to the rock they're sitting on. I had done the rest of the background, but not the rock. And so I was like, okay, I need to like just real quick put down like something for the rock. Just get it out of the way. So I did that. And then I started working the best part of drawing, the coloring. I actually don't have much to say for the skin on the blue one. Although I will say, as usual, I enjoyed coloring it, especially like on my cute little chibis, because, there's a lot of blush and, the tiny like highlights and, all those little details that really make it fun. What is interesting though, that I just feel like, not for this piece in particular, but just because I feel like no one ever notices, probably because it's such a tiny, minute detail that no one but me would ever even see it, is the way I shade eyes. I basically, I guess, almost reverse anime eye it. And I feel like this is like really, and I put so much effort into it, but I don't think it's like I really go in on the whites of the eyes and then pretty much half-ass a little bit the actual like irises. I think I don't even really have a consistent way of coloring the irises. I keep experimenting with things and, kind of doing one thing for a little bit and then another. But I have the whites down. I have a very set process for the whites of the eyes that I'm very proud of. I go in with a little bit of like an orangey, light orangey brown color across the top of the white, blend it out. And then I go in with a light blue, kind of like a light sky blue, soft brush, go around the perimeter of the eye, put that on a low opacity. Then I take a red, either the colored pencil tool or the soft brush tool, and I put a little bit of like a pinky red in the eye duct right there, put that on low opacity, and then to finish it off, I'll take the soft brush in like a whitish color, put that on like the biggest part of the white, and then go in with either the light pencil or the mechanical pencil, and I will do like a lighter white color, draw two curved lines and kind of blend out the edges. And that is how I do my eyes. The colored part does not matter. But if you want to draw an eye like how I draw an eye, that's how you do it. That's the only part that matters, is the whites of the eyes. And I stand by that. You'll also notice that I also kind of like to, once I get the colored part done, sometimes, not always, but sometimes I like to do like a blue multiply layer and just put it across the top of the eye over both layers, the white and the colored part, basically to try and tie it together. And then, I'll do like a shiny little highlight, because, yeah, girl, learn to draw from anime. Like, I'd learned to draw from anime and cartoons. So, those little cartoony highlights all over the place. For the little Blue Mermaid's top, I actually had a bit of trouble because I, like a fool, did a nice blended out on my sketch layer to get the feel for what I wanted it to look like. But then, I didn't save the colors I used initially. And I also changed the colors. And I don't know about you, but I find it's quite difficult to color pick from a really like soft airbrush, like super blended gradient. I mean, I did it, but I was finding that it didn't really quite have the same color balance as I had liked before. So I basically kept fiddling with the top adding more. My big problem was there wasn't really much left of the magenta in the middle when I went for her actual top. So I went back. You would see me like just keep fiddling with it. Just keep fiddling with it until eventually I got something that I kind of liked. I didn't quite like it as much as the original gradient that I had come up with, but it worked. So then I continued on. You'll also notice that I used these little saturated red lines to kind of create almost the impression of like the lines you'd see in fins. I actually, and this is something I do on everything, like everything, because I don't even remember exactly how I stumbled on this trick. I think I did it originally with my Echo Zane picture, which, oh my gosh, that's so old. If you don't know my DeviantArt, that statement has absolutely no context, which I'm sure is most of you guys, because I only have like 41 watchers at the moment I am recording this. That extra one is important. But yeah, I had done a piece a while back that had like a lot of brown colors, and I discovered that if you do a lot of like the little detailing and shadows with a super saturated red with the colored pencil, put that on a very low opacity, and I mean like low. Usually I do it so much like you can barely actually pick up it's there. It's just like if you turn off the layer, it looks different, but you can't quite put your finger on it. That's usually around where I put it. And then for the deeper quarters, like, you know, where it's the shadow particularly is dark, I will go in and I will go over that line with a dark, super saturated blue, and I'll put that on the low opacity. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because they're just such strong, contrasting colors. When I do that, I find it really makes my art pop. So you'll see me doing that on the skin, the clothes, the hair, various tones of saturated red and blue, because it just works on most colors I have found, and I think it just makes it look better. So that's what that is. As for Little Blue Mermaid's hair, I struggled with those buns. I struggled with those buns in the lining phase, because I really didn't sketch it out very well. I was just like, swirly bun there. And so I really, and you even would have noticed that I've kept fiddling with it in the line. I still had no idea really what I was doing once I got to the coloring, and it shows. It really shows. It's like specifically where that left bun meets the rest of the hair. Do not really know what to do with that. But you know, probably should have used a reference. But I don't think of these things. Well, I do, but I don't bother. A lot of my problems are self-made. So, you know, I worked on that. The hair ended up coming out really shiny looking, more so than I wanted. I actually later will go back and fix that by taking like the color of the shadows of her face right underneath the hair and airbrushing it like over, putting it to a low opacity to kind of like dull down the shininess. But for a while it was just kind of like very, and that's always a problem that I have a lot of times, is like balancing. I want like bright, bold, in your face colors. You know, I don't want it to be like very flat and kind of boring, but also it's like balancing that with also it not looking like this weird plasticky shiny. I don't even really know how to explain what I don't like about it, but you know, it's just kind of something where it's like very... just too shiny. Too shiny. So I'm working on that. I'm still working on trying to fix that. For her hair, her tail. I just was talking about the hair. For her tail, that one was pretty easy because it already kind of had a lot of detailing and gradient, like when I put down the flat colors. So I basically just kind of went in with the multiply, gave some like shadow. Because honestly, even if I went in with like a lot of shading, you probably wouldn't notice it. It probably would just drown out all the little color gradation. So I kept that pretty simple. And the seaweed actually I struggled with. I struggled with the seaweed in the background too. I struggle. I struggle in general. Because honestly, again, it was a matter of I didn't really plan out what it was very well. I ended up basically just blocking out the basic shape and then drawing over that without really thinking about how the braid actually really would be working particularly well. So it kind of gave me some difficulty when I was shading it. And it also was kind of just the fact that it was kind of hard to, you know, put a lot of contrast, detailing, because one, it was a little tiny thing. But also it was like, you know, a lot of it was very similar lighting. I don't know how to explain. Basically, the bits that were highlighted were all basically out in a position where it was getting a lot of the same amount of light. The bits that were hidden were all hidden by the same things. And it was like the very tiny strands that were in the hand, so it was kind of like showing, like trying to get the darkest dark, but also just not having as much room to work. I don't know if any of this makes sense, but that was what that was. Then we moved on to the little telescope fish mermaid, whom I adore, who I loved working on. Mwah! Excellent. I love the little freaky looking thing. She's not a thing. She's a person. Not really. She doesn't exist. She doesn't even have a name. She's just telescope fish mermaid. But, you know, I'm gonna pretend I have an inkling of respect for my creations. She was a lot of fun. I went ham with the skin, because honestly, one of the fun things about working with either like really light or really dark colors is you kind of can get away with going with like really funky tones, I've noticed. Like, as long as you keep it like really dark or like pretty light, you can basically use whatever colors you want, and it just still looks natural with pretty little work. Like, I was using pinks, greens, purples, oranges, you know, for her skin. Yellow, well, I usually use yellow. Yellow usually works out pretty alright. Probably because I mostly just do warm tone skin. Mostly because I struggle with cool tones in general. I need to actually work on that. Challenge for next time: work on someone with cool skin, cool toned skin. That'll be a challenge. I think maybe it's because like I like warm toned colors, and I also have very warm toned skin. Olivey warm toned. I don't know. Orange. I like orange. That basically, orange and purple. That basically just informs most of my artistic choices. But yeah, back to Little Mermaid girl. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with her skin. Oh, that sounds creepy. But her hair was a little bit of a challenge, though. like the shadows were fine, but it was like working with highlights when the base color was already like off-white was a challenge. You even see me going in and doing the highlights with like a red color to start with, because the highlight color is barely different. I really need to work on that, as well as like really finding good highlight colors for paler colors. Basically the most of what I did was I tried to contrast using a warmer white and a cooler white in the highlights to like at least try and do something. I don't know if it actually did anything, but it looks alright to me. So at the very least I didn't do anything bad as far as I can tell. I also, when working on like her little seaweed top, I originally was kind of going to go in with slightly harsher highlights, but it didn't really work. So I ended up kind of just taking the light pencil, going and doing like generally where I wanted the highlight, and then blending it out for like just a softer shading on that, and I think it worked out pretty well. Also, you'll notice that on various pieces, I'm kind of going in with like this kind of minty, tealy blue and going over things with a little bit of highlight. I'm basically, you know, I don't actually always do this, but I've been trying to be better about doing it. It's kind of like taking colors from the background and blending it into the colors of the character a little bit, like with a soft brush, to kind of try and tie them to the background a little more. I think it helps. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get it right though, and it comes out looking a little dingy instead. So I'm still like working on how to master that particular skill, but you know, I think I'm getting somewhere. So then, you know, I finished more or less, and it just wasn't looking really complete. So kind of just entirely on a whim, I decided to add in bubbles, and you like see me messing around with them a lot because I really had no plan at all for the bubbles. I wasn't even initially planning on doing the bubbles, but you know, I just thought, you know, having something that was closer to the viewer than the foreground, and then also having something in the distant background would just make it look like a more dynamic's not the word. Complete composition, like just a more interesting one. And I actually think the bubbles really, really helped. I think it honestly kind of changed the mood of the piece in my personal opinion. So I'm glad that I like thought to do them. I kind of then, you know, for the background ones, went in, did a Gaussian blur a couple times. I don't actually usually use blur effects, and I always, partially because I'm technically illiterate and struggle with them, and also, you know, it's like always the challenge of trying to get the right amount of blur and not have it look weird. That's actually also just like I have a personal problem, and this is like an issue that I have with backgrounds, is I have a very hard time picking out details and thinking of it as like part of the whole piece, because you really, for the background, things can be kind of like blurry and indistinct, and they honestly should be to like indicate distance and also to not distract from the main focus of the piece. But I have like this problem where I'm like, the detail looks wrong, I must fix it and make it look as detailed as everything else in the picture. And you'll notice that I have that problem with like a lot of my older pictures, in particular the ones where I actually bothered with a background. I'm working on like trying to fix that and like actually work with having levels of like detail to indicate, you know, where the focus is, what you know is further or not. I also and this is a bit of a cheat. I also kind of try and do that with the overlay layers that I use. Usually what I do is like put down like a base purple, so everything is kind of like a little bit tinged purple, because I think it makes it like a bit of a cohesive feel. Sometimes, you know, if I want a particular mood, I might use a different color than purple. And then I basically go in usually with a dark blue, and I'll go in with all the stuff that I really don't want you to pay much attention to, and I'll go in with that dark blue over that, or that's like supposed to be particularly dark or, you know, obscured. And then yeah, I'll go with an orange and highlight all the things I want you to pay attention to. So I'll highlight the faces with an orange overlay. I might highlight if they're holding something, that to like kind of draw your eye, which is honestly such a cheat, and I'm aware of that, but I still do it all the time. And I put it pretty low. I usually like how it looks. Sometimes I don't, because I feel like sometimes it does kind of flatten out the colors, and so I'm still kind of trying to work with that and figure out what I like. I'm still learning, and I'm still trying to actually figure out what I'm doing, and that's honestly part of why I'm doing this channel. Gonna try and do it because I'm kind of at an interesting point in my life. I'm about to start my sophomore year of college. Didn't really have much of a normal freshman year on account of the pandemic, but it's kind of just like that idea of staring down like, oh, I'm about to kind of get to the point where in a couple of years I'm going to be out in the working world, and I kind of want to develop the skills that I need for the jobs I actually want to do. You know, I love art. I'd love to be able to do art. I want to try and grow an audience, you know, so I can make money off of my art, and also so I can improve. I also have an interest in voice acting, but unfortunately I've never really pursued a lot of acting opportunities like in school and stuff, because I have a lot of social anxiety that I'm currently working on. And so this is kind of just my way of being like forcing myself to go out there, get experience, you know, on a mic, get experience talking to people, and just kind of, you know, work on developing skills that I need to actually, you know, succeed in what I want to do. Because I really love doing creative work, and that requires developing your skills and having people know about your work, and also a certain level of confidence that I've been lacking over the years, and that I'm trying to force myself to learn. And so I'm really glad if after this whole rambly mess you want to come around, stick around for future videos and watch me learn how to draw and not be a total awkward mess. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Make sure to like and subscribe for more videos. Probably. If I can get my stuff together enough to actually make more. Gonna make more. Promise. Very loose promise. Pinky promise, but it's not like actually hooking the pinkies. It's like pinky touch. Pinky touch promise. Alright. Enough of me rambling. Bye.